All right, everybody, thank you so much for joining us. This is another episode of FutureProof News Podcast. F yourself. Today, we're going to talk about the news and some of the things that are happening in the news, and we think it's important to review them just quickly. Today is April 30th, and in the news, the news about the GDP. So the economy shrank by 0.3% in the first quarter. It's the first negative reading since 2022. And we can argue all we want about what caused this, but this is the state we're in. This is what we're faced with, not just consumer spending, but how companies are leading, or maybe they're just following, right? And so, John, I'll put it to you. I mean, what do you think some of the implications are for this shrinking GDP, especially so soon into a new presidency?
I mean, again, we're living in very uncertain times for people. You know, I speak to a lot of people every day trying to find something new, and this doesn't help, I think, consumer confidence. It doesn't help people with confidence in the job market. Someone messaged me the other day who I've known for years. He's like, I think this is another 2009 for white collar workers. And I'm having a hard time saying, no, you're wrong, because it does kind of feel like that. But it's very unusual for people because you have that contrast with seeing a lot of movement within their networks at the exact same time. So yeah, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out and if it's going to change kind of the tariff policies at all.
Well, we've already seen consumer spending, right? Consumer spending has gone at a slower pace, right? I think it climbed 1.8%, which was the weakest pace since almost 2 years ago. So that's going to be an indication. And kind of on the back end of that, Amazon, they're starting to change their pricings, right, strategy, so that the consumer doesn't get hit as much. But what does that do? That creates smaller margins for the small suppliers, the people and the companies that are selling on Amazon. We've also seen UPS. They're going to start laying off tens of thousands of people just because people aren't buying as much, right? So if we see that, what does that mean for the American economy, corporations that are trying to sell more product? Just today, the S&P is already down over 1.5%. NASDAQ is down 2%. The Dow it's down 1.6%. And of course, that means flight to quality, right? So flight to quality means people are going to buy bonds, and so they're going to go towards bonds, or they're going to go to currencies or Bitcoin, right? Any of the cryptos. Now payrolls also came out, right, John? Is that right?
Yeah, they are not hitting. What was it? It was. Yeah, private payrolls are missing expectations. Right. So they only rose by 62,000 instead of 120,000.
Right, and so that means that companies aren't hiring as fast as we might have expected for this past month, right? And so,
we've been seeing that for this quarter.
Right?
Companies are moving so slow in comparison to a year and a half ago. One thing I find interesting, right? We're talking about the GDP and kind of what we're seeing out there in the market. Simultaneously, you have a scenario that's been happening. You look at what's been going on with Nintendo, right? They're selling they're pre-ordering their next model of their Switch product, which people have been complaining about because it's gone up in price up to like $450 instead of $300. And the games are going up to like $80-$90 a piece. And yet pre-orders sold out within seconds. GameStop's website crashed entirely. The only people who had success pre-ordering from them, I think, were people who went to stores to pre-order. Nintendo hasn't even done their own pre-order yet. Theirs is on the 8th, I believe, which I'm signed up for. But it's really fascinating because here you have a high-end product. considered kind of, a necessity that's going higher, and yet you see somewhere like Starbucks is struggling to hit their numbers.
Yeah.
Which is also, people, I guess maybe millennials finally stopped having lattes because they were tired of hearing boomers tell them that was the reason they weren't buying homes.
Yeah, it's all the lattes and all the avocado toasts, right?
It's the avocado toast, right?
Yeah, it's
Well, so how about on the hiring front, since you guys are in the recruiting space and you've placed people at AI training jobs
Yeah.
and AI firms, the news that I was focused on was a couple weeks ago we had the Shopify CEO message leak, and then he came out and owned up to it and said we're going to be an AI first company, and basically before you ask for higher headcount in your department, you have to justify why AI can't do that. Duolingo's CEO sent an email out that said basically the same exact thing. We're going to get rid of contractors and use AI to replace them. I don't want to replace my people, but I want to automate some of the tedious tasks. Do you think some of the sluggishness in the hiring numbers is because companies are waiting to see can AI supplement or enhance rather than headcount, or do you think that's just a coincidence with the GDP and everything else going on?
No, it's been a trend over the past, ever since ChatGPT became the forefront of people's minds. Companies have been trying to figure out how they can use something like that to do menial tasks. And, BuzzFeed was one of the first. They slashed a ton of writers because, look, what's ChatGPT really good at? Taking existing information out there and creating a listicle.
Yeah, right. Sports Illustrated too. They admitted that they were using a lot of AI just to write all of their articles, right, and covering the news, right. And so what are they doing? They're just piggybacking off of other news sources and then rewriting things. And so to your point, Aaron, the AI first mentality, we've seen this, coming for got to be over a year and a half now, right? When we first started talking and we started thinking about how can we help people, with our school, FutureProof You, and how can we help people with their pivots, right? Maybe it's not just an AI first mentality at the corporate level. Maybe it's something more simple like a return to office, right? Mandate, or even just going from 2 days in the office to 4 days in the office, right? That is for anybody with a small child, that's going to be a game changer in how they operate on a daily basis. It's going to increase their daily, monthly costs of how they run their family, right? And so I think this is really spurring on a lot of volatility in the labor markets. I think John and I, being recruiters, we see a lot of talent that's willing to look at other things. So with so much supply in the marketplace, I think it's going to drive prices down actually on salaries.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah,
So
it's already started to do that.
My question then, John, is all of that being said, what really matters, especially for our audience, is, okay, so what's that mean for me as somebody who's looking to pivot or has been laid off or is trying to find a new role? Like what does all of this mean? Can you distill that down for that listener?
Yeah, I think it's going to change the way people have to find a job. Again, whenever there's an overabundance of people out on the market, you have to get a lot scrappier as a candidate than just simply applying for a job. I think it means that the average time it's going to take you to get to something is going to be a lot longer.
Great.
The chances that you're going to be a full-time employee versus a contractor are getting smaller. I think a lot more companies want flexible workforces if they're not going to use AI. All those things happen when we have recessions. It's not always that hiring slows down so bad that people, it's terrible. It's also just it changes the dynamic of the candidate experience overall. So yeah, I think that's one thing. I think people just need to start thinking about what's coming next, right? And continue to stay on top of trends because, as we say all the time, what is it? 80% of jobs in 2030 won't have existed before.
Yeah,
Is that
yeah,
the number?
that's the number. It's I think it's over 80%. Um, so many of those
I
jobs.
feel like that's a high number. I think that might be a little wrong.
Yeah, but I do think that
But the nature of our jobs will be so
the nature of
different
the
by
jobs,
then.
absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
just even at Google, right? Not only did they talk about the return to office, right, to at least 4 days a week, but they're moving the goalposts on how people can be compensated, especially with their bonuses, right? And so that's definitely going to cause some disruption, there as well.
Yeah.
An empirical example of the new job, I saw the listing for a vibe coder posted on a job board. Not a software engineer, not a developer, vibe coder. I am pretty sure until 2025, there was never a job in human history posted for a vibe coder. So
What
somebody's going to
is
have
it?
it. Are you guys familiar with vibe coding?
No.
So it's basically AI powered developing where you're using Lovable, Bolt, Windsurf,
Oh
this
wow.
AI augmented development tool where you say, I want a mobile app that does this. Here's a screenshot of what I want it to look like. Here's the feature set. I guess I haven't been super transparent with you guys that I've been kind of vibe coding on the weekends and trying to figure out some stuff. But my wife will come in the office and it's pretty funny now. She'll be like, are you vibing right now? And it doesn't mean the soundtrack is hitting differently. It means
Yeah.
like I'm trying to build a web app, but I've never written code in my life until the last, I don't know, week or two. And so you use an AI tool and it's like, this is what I want it to look like.
Yeah.
And it writes the code. Okay, this is the structure of the pages I want. And it writes the code. And anyways, there was a company that was specifically hiring vibe coders to like quickly develop a beta version of apps and websites, and then I assume their true developers would go in and fine tune and like polish up the code. But there's a kid in computer science right now who's learning how to code and get a degree, and by the time he's out, there's already vibe coder jobs being posted. That's what I want to speak to John's. I like your skepticism of the 80%. The honest answer is nobody knows, right?
Yeah.
Go back 5 years and see if it's correct in 2030. But it's happening. It's just a matter of to what degree and how
Well,
many.
the question is what? All right. So when we think about it, what jobs are the ones that are going to be replaced? Right. And then how does this shift change existing jobs? So, for instance, a lot of recruiting software is starting to implement, you know, AI extensively, and one of the things I think is going to happen is I think the candidate experience is actually going to get better because of AI. Because I think AI, in the long run, will be able to pre-qualify candidates and start an engagement with them earlier than they're used to, right? The part that I think, finding candidates, that will probably take longer for AI to learn unless it's something more simplistic. But it'll still be able to do it at some point because recruiters are now being hired by recruiting tech companies to prompt, to help large language models learn how to do what they're doing. It's those outside cases. Like, I always find technology has a harder time with product designers than they do accountants because it's very subjective in comparison. But where will recruiting shift? Well, relationships will still be important, but how will in-house recruiters keep their jobs? I think they have to start to go up the food chain and think more holistically about how talent moves throughout their organization, not just getting them in the door, but also about mapping talent across the organization and being able to help strategize how to move people throughout. So that's an example of something that sounds like it's going to be displaced, but I think is going to shift dramatically.
Well,
I
I
think,
mean, you say you think that the candidate experience is going to get better with AI. That's great, but like, don't we don't we believe in that relationships and networking and meeting people is still going to be the best way to find a job?
Yeah, of course, of course. But I think AI will I think AI will enable candidates who tend to get missed in the process be able to be surfaced more easily if they've applied.
Okay. Okay.
I think it'll also be, I think you'll see a lot more use of applicant tracking systems internally to find talent that have already applied to a job if AI is involved, because
That I agree
you can
with.
start.
Yep.
You can start from, you don't have to start every search from scratch. You can start with your pool of talent that you've had and create campaigns. We're seeing some of this already in the software. There's a few platforms that do it somewhat well. Loxo being one of them, that actually has really good search functionality and AI functionality.
Great. Good. Good.
What about this? What does that do to the importance or the value of a cover letter and a resume?
Interesting. A cover letter might actually be read if AI is involved, whereas it probably isn't when it's humans.
Takes too long, right?
Do you think that might actually make it more important to have like a well-crafted, specific keyword packed?
It might. It might. We'll have to see. Again, I think it's always going to come down to relationships. You know, I don't think applying it'll change the nature of applying. Hopefully, what it will do is stop people who apply to things they have no business applying for.
Yeah, it'll
If you're gonna
filter
get
that
auto-
out more easily.
Yeah,
Yep.
yeah, because that's the challenge is until those systems can automatically do that for someone. You know, right now, Dan and I saw this when we were working on that on a contract. The applicant tracking system had knockout questions. You know, are you based in any of these states? No. And then you look and they're based in one of those states. They just lie. And you don't, or they made a mistake. I've seen people make a mistake the opposite way, accidentally knock themselves out.
Yeah. That's right.
So, like, you know, AI could evaluate that more easily in the future. And that way, when a person does get involved, they'll have more details. You know, the same thing you mentioned, AI agents, chances are applicant tracking systems will start to integrate those into the process, and they'll do a preliminary screen before a human gets involved at all.
Well, that's
Yeah.
that is a future that doesn't seem so outlandish.
It doesn't. And the thing about it, most people are afraid of that. But when you really think about it, guess what's going to be less biased?
Right.
The computer.
Right. Yeah. The computer will not judge on the way you look, right? And it may not even judge your speech patterns or your accent.
Well, unless it's a biased,
Right.
model.
right, unless it's a bias.
So you have to make sure that it's not a biased model first.
That's why the expert is going to get paid to train it and stay in the loop and ensure that that's being followed and there's not hallucinations or context being lost. That's the thing, is like some recruiter already has that skill and they're probably going to get paid by some company to build a product that uses what they know in an AI first format instead of a human first. And that's every industry right now. If you don't know how to do it, someone else is, and they're training an AI model.
And trust me, like that contract that we were working with the AI placements, they are moving more and more into coding languages now. So they're hiring people who can code to train these models. And so, that's one place that's going to be disrupted a lot, because hands-on coding is going to not be as important as an understanding.
Yep.
How to prompt.
Vibe code at first, and you can have a working app on the App Store within 2 hours. I've seen so many examples of that. I built a website from scratch, and I had never opened a terminal. I didn't understand HTML or CSS or JavaScript, and I can build a website with animated hero sections and all this stuff. That doesn't make me an expert, but I think the kind of jobs that are getting replaced are the entry-level contractor, administrative assistant, data entry, because tools can do those better, faster, and cheaper. The concern that I have is, so what happens to the people on those career paths where the entry-level jobs aren't going to be open 5, 10, 15 years from now? Who's going to be the senior or intermediate level?
How do you get a senior version? Yeah.
I don't know the answer to that, but that's what I think a lot of people are afraid of, that it causes this cascade effect and we can't see second and third order effects of that.
Yeah, it's definitely scary to think about, for sure.
Well, it still boils down to being a candidate that connects, right, with whoever the audience is. If it's the recruiter or if it's the hiring manager, it's all about understanding and doing your research beforehand, right, and preparing your stories that align with what they're looking for, which leads us to our classes next month. And we are reprising our Ace the Interview class, John's favorite topic. We will also have Roast My Profile. So that's an invitation, a free kind of discussion where you come on and we will criticize nicely your profile and how can we optimize it in just a few minutes. In quotes, nicely. And then we're also launching a community. So we're figuring out the logistics of that, but
launched.
Oh, it's launched. It's launched. So we're live. But we invite you to join our community. We invite you to show up, and depending on the topic, it could be an AMA or it could be something specific. But we'll definitely have a lot more information about that coming very, very soon. So this has been FutureProof You, our podcast, F Yourself. Aaron, any final comments of what you're seeing these days?
I'd say, just to wrap it up for the job seeker, career pivot people out there, the human relationships and networking are becoming more valuable every day. And the creating digital archives or portfolios or posts of your work are also becoming more valuable every day. And those are two things in tandem that I think all job seekers and career pivoters should be working on, and something that I put a lot of time and effort into myself personally based on what you guys have taught me.
It's like your career SEO.
Right.
Exactly. Because those applicant tracking systems are going to start indexing social media profiles, websites.
They have to.
Like, they're going to scrape data from those. That's what's going to separate you. So you should be building that up, especially now when a lot of it's human and we don't know that that's an AI avatar that made the video or wrote the article necessarily.
Yeah, the deep fakes are getting more and more complex. John, any final words for us?
No, I think, well, yeah, I guess so. I would say, you'll constantly have to be thinking about what's new, what's coming up, what skills you can learn. And also, one of the things that you're passionate about, Dan, is like, get that side hustle going if you haven't yet, so that if something does disrupt your day job, you've got something to fall back on and you've built a new skill set that you can leverage.
Absolutely. We all diversify our 401ks and our retirement. We might as well diversify our earnings ability. So, again, thank you so much for joining another episode of F Yourself. My name is Dan Yu. I'm joined by my colleagues Aaron McKelty and John Lovig. Till next time, thank you so much.